Hello again. Greetings, everybody. This is K-Rail reporting live in my living room in Park City, Utah. I almost said Northeast Pennsylvania. Shockingly, for some reason that still radiates in my head, and I haven't lived there in over a decade. Anyway, I got a funny story to tell you before we get started with my good friend Mark Testa. 6 years ago, I ate a bowl of oatmeal for breakfast. When I used to eat breakfast, I was still fasting for at least 12 hours, mind you, and it was after my workout when I worked out in a fasted state. And I had chia seeds in that gruel that I made, and protein powder and all these other fun little things. Well, 6 hours later, I'm at the gym training somebody, and I felt something weird in the back of my tooth. I got my tongue back there, and all of a sudden I went ping, and I felt this pop back there. And guess what happened? A chia seed was stuck in one of the crevices of the back of my tooth. I liberated it with my tongue, and it was really gooey and soft and chewy. So I just sat there and I chomped on it, and I swallowed it. And down the road I went. And it kind of reminded me of a pimple popping. And I know that sounds disgusting, but I am absolutely enamored with Dr. Pimple Popper. If you guys ever saw her on Instagram or YouTube and watched just 5 mere minutes, you would be hooked too, I promise you. I know it's disgusting, but it's part of human nature. What the heck? So I like seeing pimples being popped, whatever. It is what it is. Anyway, there's my funny chia seed story of the day. Now, I want you all to go to pinepollensuperfoods.com and check out the programs that Mark and I have got going. We have this program called Rebuild, which is awesome. We got this other thing called Reversing Middle Age, which we'll talk about today. And just be cool and be chill and just love Earth and love the world. And go out and roll around in the snow, play with your dog, hug your neighbor, kiss your neighbor on the forehead or cheek. Nothing's going to happen. Nothing. Hey, Nancy, nice to see you. Great to see you on Internet Wizardry. Let's call it that. Now, without any further ado, I'm waiting for Mark to pop in here, and I don't see him. He should be coming in very shortly. But we've got lots of fun stuff to talk about today, such as the Low Carb Diet, which has been around forever, in my opinion. And it is still... I guess it's just still gaining momentum, folks. It hasn't gone away, and it's not going to anytime soon. And I've got my take on it. Mark has his take on it. We're going to address that. I like to talk about sugar. Listen, I'm half Italian. My mom was full-blooded Italian, 100% to the bone. She loved bread. She loved pasta. She loved sweets. Excuse me. Little phlegm in the throat. And, you know, she lived a happy life, too. She died tragically in a car accident 3 years ago. I still am not over it, and I still fall on the ground in a ball of tears and not vomit, but I feel awful sometimes. However, she lived a happy life, and she was a big role model to me. But she loved sweets, and she loved potato chips and all those things and all those carbs. And Mark just attended this low carb, I don't know what you would call it, seminar, workshop, weekend, or whatever. There, Mark is watching. I'm going to get him in, and we're going to go right into talking about that. So hang tight as I get him in here. I want to add you to my video. Approve. And now everything is buffering. Don't you love the word buffering? It's kind of funny, actually. Hey! Hey! Where's your...
Morning, Kevin.
Get your earbuds in, bro. Oh, you got them? We hear this heinous echo sound when we don't wear earbuds. You guys probably hear it out there, too. I had Doug Orchard on last week, and things were just echoing like crazy. Hey! Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Great.
How are you?
Welcome, Mark.
Thank you.
I was just chatting about my massive sweet tooth disorder. I mean, I've talked about my eating disorder in the past, and those who know me kind of know my situation there. But my issue has always been a sweet tooth disorder. And ironically, you just went to this low-carb convention that I'm dying to hear some scratch about. And I deliberately have been distancing myself from you so we can have a fun, engaging conversation about said conference today. Because I want to hear what your take is, because I've got my take, and I know you've got yours, and I'm dying to know. So first of all, welcome. And
yeah, thank you.
And what's shaking, man? How you been? You been busy too?
I've been good.
Yeah?
Getting through this blizzard we had yesterday.
Oh, it was yummy. I loved every minute of it. We had the same.
I did too.
It was awesome.
Yeah, did you?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I've been waiting to talk to you about this too. I need someone to hold my feet to the fire, make sure I'm not just like, oh my God, that was such a great conference. I believe everything I heard.
Yeah, well,
and I trust you to do that. So
yeah, I'm just a realist, man. I look at things through the fine lens scope of what makes sense, and I love to hear and gather information. I like to forage, just like they used to forage years ago when food wasn't as easy as walking down to a grocery store. And you had to walk outside with a spear and kill everything to eat. That's kind of how I do with knowledge, and I just kind of open my tentacles and I try to pick things up. But I'm dying to know kind of what you learned or what you heard out there.
So, it was a great conference. It was put on by the Denver Diet doctor. He's an internal medicine guy, and this is his second or third year doing it. And they bring in, really great speakers. There were speakers here from around the world. and researchers and, journalists like Gary Taubes.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
And so it came from a lot of perspectives, and it was great because after every session at the end of, right before the morning or the evening session was over, they had everyone on stage, and it was good to see some colorful but professional disagreement on things.
Yeah.
And so I'll start there. I still think there's a lot of disagreement, and there is no one way to eat. Okay, let's
Praise
just remember
Jesus.
that.
That's all I'm going to say. Hallelujah.
Yes, there is no one way to eat, and I think Gary Taubes. I listened to his talk last night again. It brings it up. Look, if you, like most Americans, like if you are overweight, if you are obese, if you are pre-diabetic,
Hey, Zach,
right?
Go ahead, keep going.
That's probably half of Americans right there. Half. You likely have insulin and glucose issues. And if that is the cause of all those problems for you, then low carb is the way for you to go. So same goes with, and they had cardiologists. There were a couple cardiologists there as well, and they were like saying, it is not the fat that is the problem. It is the glucose and the insulin that are the problem. So let me add that to the list. Mm-hmm. If you are overweight, obese, diabetic, pre-diabetic, and have cardiovascular disorders, then this is probably good for you. But let me add to that list. If you are diabetic, pre-diabetic, obese, overweight, cardiovascular disorders, and worried about dementia, you probably should be eating low carb. So I walked away from that going, this is not about keto. This is not about low carb. This is about regulating blood chemistry that are the drivers of these chronic diseases that we're treating. And giving people a statin drug is not a solution. Giving them something that's going to cause acetylcholine to stay in the brain longer so that they don't lose their memory, with Alzheimer's. Fen and the phentermine, the drugs for weight loss, is not the solution. The solution is, for a lot of these conditions, is low carb. And why low carb? Because it regulates insulin and glucose.
Better than any other thing, yes.
Better than any other thing.
That's like the quickest way in, yeah.
It is. Mm-hmm. And, but the one thing that I didn't, there's still a silo around was...
Sorry, I keep it...
Was they didn't talk about fasting a whole lot.
That's
as a way to really bring this down. They skimmed over the top. Many of you are probably intermittent fasting. Now let's get into low carb keto and even worse, the carnivore diet.
Ooh, yes. I've been hearing some...
Right? That's the extreme low carb.
I've been hearing some chatter about Mr. Caveman diet. And I kind of just go like, my eyebrow goes way up in the air like the people's eyebrow, except he does it on the right, I do it on the left. And I am a little, my father died from colon cancer. And I think, I don't know if I've had in-depth conversations with you about that whole situation that I went through. It was tragic. Mm-hmm. It was awful. I had to see my dad go from like 185 pounds of rock solid muscle working in the Carpenters Union, slinging sheets of drywall all day, to about 105 pounds in a hospital bed with his cheek sunken in it and his bones sticking out of his face. And I saw him take his last breath in the hospital. And if any of you have witnessed someone die right before your eyes, especially a loved one, I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy. It is the absolute worst feeling you could possibly imagine. You always remember the date, the time, the place, the look on his face, the look on your face, what happened, the reaction of the family members. And I saw this go down right in front of me. And that was like one of my major epiphanies that started me in this direction that I've gone. And I had to figure out why, how did he get in that position? He was always active. He was always, everyone's like, oh, you got to stay active and you'll ward off disease. He did all the right things except his diet is not what he did right. And that's when I started digging deeper into pesticides, glyphosate, chemicals, all the stuff he used to use in the garden, the stuff he used to eat, the stuff he used to drink, and his lifestyle. And he was stressed out and he had all these different things going on. And I decided that those are the things not to do, and I'm going to do the complete opposite. And one of the things that I noticed was his diet was low in fiber. And fiber is a major component of my diet. And I base my diet personally around a high fiber diet. Now, if I'm doing low carb and I'm doing keto and I'm doing caveman diets, how much fiber am I getting in my diet? The absolute zip, that's how much. The average adult should get 25 to 30 grams of fiber a day. And I don't think maybe 5% of the population gets that. You and me might get it because some of these people watching who are in the know. But in the big picture, It's not happening. And yes, you can get it through like avocados and nuts and seeds, but you'd have to eat like pounds of seeds and nuts to get the amount of fiber you can get from a piece of fruit or from like beans or carrots or like other things like that are strictly restricted on the low carb diet. So that's where my defining line comes in. However, that being said, you brought up some very valid points, and I'm going to tell all of you watching right now out there the same exact thing, is you have to eat what works best for you. If you are pre-diabetic, diabetic, overweight, obese, predisposed to heart disease, and all those things Mark rattled off, I would say yes, maybe low carb is the way to go for you. And if it works for your lifestyle, and you can do it every day, and you can do it while traveling, and you can do it at bar mitzvahs, and you can do it on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, and at work functions, when people bring in birthday cakes and donuts, then great, more power to you. And avoid death prematurely, and avoid the operating table. And if low carb is the way, and it's not going to cause you any other bodily harm or conditions or diseases, I say go for it.
So yeah, let me back up real quick to fiber. So interesting, Zoe Harcomb, HARCOMB.PhD.com.
1 second, I need to respond to Don. Don, that sounds very interesting. Can you just PM me a little bit more detail about that? Because I'd like to talk to you behind the scenes about it, because I have some theories about it. We'll come back to it. Anyway, go ahead, Mark.
Okay. She gave a talk about we don't need fiber in our diet.
Really? We need fat, right? We need fat because fat helps, it's like liquid plumber for the intestines, right? Is that because I've heard that before? I've heard that.
She's like, it's residue. That's what you poop out. Yeah, no kidding. But she's like, there's never been a randomized control trial that show people do better with or without fiber in their diet. We just recommend it all the time. And I'm like thinking, that makes zero sense. There's never been a randomized control trial that's showing drinking water does anything for you either. But right. So should we say you don't need water? I just find that hard to believe, and you know, and the carnivore diet people, and there were physicians on stage. I've lost 50 pounds, I've lost 45 pounds, whatever. Haven't eaten anything but meat or animal protein for 9-10 months, and again, you know, no long-term data on what is the safety of that. What does that do to, you know, the gut flora? And you know, that question came up in her talk, and she thought the microbiome was a bit out of our reach yet. We don't really know enough about it to say that fiber is beneficial. I agree with you though, and again, there's no one diet. I don't want to pretend like I came out of there believing everything I heard, but I do think, you know, to your point, fiber is very important, and there are ways to eat low carb and get plenty of vegetables.
Right.
In your diet to have a good amount of fiber and to continue to eat low carb. Low carb, again, why do we want low carb? So for weight and diabetes and all that other stuff, couple reasons, and you know this, Kevin, but when insulin levels high, glucagon levels are low. Glucagon is what moves fat out of storage for us to burn. Mm-hmm. When insulin's high, they can't coexist together. When insulin's high, you're just shoving fat into, insulin into the cell. When it doesn't go in there, you become diabetic. Then the body shoves it into the liver. And when it doesn't go in there, you get fatty liver, and then you get elevated lipids and triglycerides spilling out and increased risk for cardiovascular disease. When it doesn't fit in there, it gets shoved into the abdominal fat, and you get a big belly, and you get this central adiposity, which is a risk for everything, right? Metabolic syndrome, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, dementia, arthritis, you name it. And then when you can't shove it in there anymore, we shove it into the pancreas. And all this gets, and then the pancreas shuts down. The beta cells stop producing insulin, and this cycle is such a bad cycle that so many Americans are on the trajectory of. I left that thing and with a big wake up, and you know, I ended up at Costco right afterwards, and I'm walking around those aisles.
I was there yesterday.
Now I'm really,
Love it.
And they have a lot of nice boxes, and the packaging's beautiful, and the quinoa, and the this, and the that, and the whole grain, and the non-GMO, and the organic, and you pick up the box, and I ask myself, why do we eat so many carbohydrates? Well, shitty food is everywhere, but even healthy food that you think is healthy,
not so
I
much.
pick up the box, quarter cup. Who the hell is eating a quarter cup of anything?
That's true.
Really?
That's like a thimbleful, and I got to...
Exactly. So, 17 grams of carbs in a quarter cup, but you figure most people are eating 2 to 4 times that amount. Now you're up to 60 grams
quickly
in one
dish
dish that maybe is not even one meal. Maybe that's part of your meal of additional crap with rice or who knows what else, because the conservative, the liberal low number for low carb, the liberal is 100 grams of carbohydrate.
Yeah, that's what I heard is the liberal number. No, more so like
the liberal.
Yeah, I would say 50 grams or less with most people I know that are following a strict low carb diet, or like most of the keto people I know are aiming for like 50 or less, and those that are hardcore are going 30 or less. And I always tell them all the same thing. I say that's cool if it works for you and you can live with it, and if you're getting your fiber. I'm like, to me it always comes back to the fiber. Now, if you go get 2 broccoli crowns and you steam those up, and you literally have like a steak or like salmon or whatever your protein of choice is, and you literally eat like all that broccoli in a meal, you're probably going to be okay, because you're going to get a good amount. You're going to get 6 to 8 grams of fiber for that whole thing, a bunch of vitamin A, a bunch of other nutrients that the broccoli can provide you, and then you're going to get your protein too, and you're still going to stay low carb. And the rule of thumb is you subtract your fiber from your carbs, and then you're just knock that down. So if something has 27 grams of carbs, 6 grams of fiber, technically it's 21 usable grams of carbs, which I wanted to ask you if they talked about that too, and I wanted to know what your take was on that.
Some people touched on it. I think,
because I've heard, I went to the IDEA Personal Trainer Summit last year down in Texas, and there was a speaker, and I don't remember if it was Jenna Wilson or who it was. It might have been some guy from the, what is the name of that? There's some nutritional certification out there. I don't know. It was some dude giving a seminar. And I think I asked that question, and I could have sworn he said it depends on the food, or it depends on something, whether you can subtract the fiber from the carbs. And he's like, it's not always the case. And I think what he was making the point of is similar to what we tell people about fasting who want to drink coffee and want to drink like bulletproof coffee and put the fat in the coffee. It depends on what your blood glucose levels are going to be. And the only way you can truly tell is if you prick your finger and check your blood before and after you drink the coffee 20 minutes later to see if your blood sugar rises enough. And he was making some kind of point like that. And I was wondering if you've heard anything of that nature too. Because when Atkins broke onto the scene and they were super popular back around 2000 to 2002, 3, whatever, they were absolutely adamant about subtract the fiber because it doesn't count. Because all their products, they had like gluten, like that, they had these, keto bagels or like Atkins bagels, and there was like 18 grams of protein, 18 grams of fiber per bagel, and then I think if you got 5 packs, you got a free roll of toilet paper, if I remember correctly.
Because you need it.
But it was like, they're like subtract, they had like this little formula on the side of the package. It was 18 grams of carbs, 16 grams of fiber. 16 minus 18 equals 2 net carbs, 2 usable carbs. And that was like a huge craze back then. And I got thinking, I'm like, is that actually seriously legitimate, or is it just marketing hype to get people to buy the product? And I've always wondered what your take was. We never talked about this before.
Yeah, so they didn't really go into that depth with this. Okay. My take on it is if it's undigestible fiber that the body cannot use,
correct,
then you can subtract it. But if it's fiber that the body's going to end up breaking down, because fiber is just another starch.
Correct.
Starches are just molecules of glucose all bound together. So I think it depends on the kind of starch. I believe it's soluble
and insoluble,
fiber,
right?
And insoluble. So I'm not sure. I don't recall which one gets actually broken down, but
soluble does. Soluble gets broken down, and they always recommend you drink an abundant amount of water with your meals. But the paradox comes in with the water because of what we know about the digestive enzymes. So if you're guzzling water with your meals, great, I'm gonna create bulk in my stomach and curb my appetite, and it's gonna help with the digestion of fiber. But it's not gonna help with the digestion of fiber because you're blocking your digestive enzymes from coming into play, and they're gonna have a harder time breaking down your food. So paradox again. Then what do you do? What Mark and I recommend, especially when you're fasting and you're eating only 2 meals a day or 3 meals a day, time restricted eating or feeding, whatever you want to call it. Do not guzzle water with your meal. In fact, Mark is pretty strict about do not drink water 20 minutes before or 20 minutes after your meal. Just like you're going to go swimming, you don't want to eat 20 minutes before or after because you'll get cramps.
Right.
So it's similar to that because you want your digestive juices to work.
Yeah, so a lot of the conversation hung around, refined, rapidly digestible carbohydrates, right?
Okay.
Refined grains, refined sugar, and so keto is the flip side of this whole thing. It's the other side of the coin because I think it can be confusing. Keto does not mean living on fat. That's not what that means. What it means is getting your body into a ketotic state, ketosis, the mobilization of stored fat as energy when insulin levels are low, glucagon levels go high. So why do insulin levels become low? Because you're not feeding the body a bunch of crappy carbohydrates, or you're not feeding the body 6 small meals a day, keeping that level high. Gary Taubes showed a study that insulin really prevents the mobilization of fat at all. It's very, how did he say it? It's insensitive fat is insensitive to insulin. And so nothing ever moves out. So you can only get into ketosis if insulin levels are low. And insulin levels stay low by not eating a bunch of crappy refined stuff and by not eating all the time. And like we talk about, not snacking between meals. And as Jason Fung, who spoke here as well, talks about, is like letting it go down low and stay low for a period of time so that insulin becomes sensitive to glucose again. And it's not just, oh yeah, there's glucose again, there it is again. And the body keeps releasing more and more insulin because it's the insulin that becomes the problem, the storage hormone. And he wasn't even there to talk about fasting per se. He was there to talk more about insulin with polycystic ovary syndrome, which affects so many women, which I really like the definition of, is just it's just another form of diabetes.
Interesting.
It's just another form of diabetes, right? We got diabetes in the brain with Alzheimer's. We got diabesity, which is obesity caused by too much insulin. In women, in polycystic ovary syndrome, which causes, cyclic acne, it causes hyperandrogenism, so they get more testosterone than they need, and they get, lowered voice. They may actually start growing hair where they don't need it, and they become infertile. And so Clomid is sort of the infertility drug they use with these women. And I love to hear Jason Fung go off on a rant. He's like, that doesn't even address the underlying cause. Yeah. We don't even address the underlying cause, which is, eating shitty and having too much insulin floating around from too many largely refined carbs. But, if you're keeping track of 100 grams of carbohydrates a day, it's easy to overeat. It really is. And you have to pay attention to it. But I don't think you need to starve yourself. I don't think you need to be, eating MCT oil, avocados, nuts 24/7. I do think those are right things to bring into your diet. And like you said, cauliflower and broccoli are low in carbs. Most cruciferous vegetables are. Cabbage is low in carbs.
Brussels sprouts.
Lettuce, Brussels sprouts, low in carbs. Yeah. You don't want to eat white rice. You don't want to eat potatoes necessarily. I mean, look, you can, if that's going to be your allotment of carbs for the day.
Right. Well,
and go ahead.
Yeah, and that also ties into the beauty of what we do as fasting coaches too, when we give people advice on that. If you're following a 2-meal-a-day plan or 3-meal-a-day plan, 100 grams of carbs can go a pretty long way in 2 meals, 3 meals.
Right.
You're not depriving yourself that much. You're having a serving, like 30 grams of carbs in 3 meals is 90, and that's a good amount of carbs. I mean, a good sized big sweet potato or yam is 27 to 30 carbs. An entire banana, like a large banana, is 27. So if you're using 100 grams of carbs a day as a cutoff line, I mean, that's a piece of cake, in my opinion. It's just like people that give me the excuse that they don't have 30 minutes exercise a day, and I laugh in your face because you all have 30 minutes at least exercise a day, even if you add it up into small increments. I've been doing it for almost 12 years in a row. I want to hear no excuses. Sorry, didn't mean to get angry.
No, that
Shanti. Okay, I'm centered now. That's a whole nother ball game.
Yeah. So, I agree, right? Back to our point, I think our 80-20 eating thing actually is a doable way to eat where you can actually not deprive yourself of anything. And you know, Johnny, let me address the Biome thing as well. You know, right, I recommend Biome. I have since it came out. This is a stool test to look at your gut flora, and they use artificial intelligence to determine, based on pathways that those microbes utilize, what feeds that microbe best. Now, I was an early adopter. I've been at it about a year. I've seen that AI change over and over and over and over again. And so what was a good thing for me to eat now is not. And so what I'm saying is, don't put all your eggs in the Biome results just yet. Listen to your ultimate tool, your body.
Right.
How do you feel when you eat these things? How does it make you feel bloated? Does it give you gas? Does it make you sleepy? And listen to that as much. And listen to the Biome to some extent. But if you can eat certain things and it doesn't make you feel bad, I think it's an important thing to listen to. Only while the AI continues to catch up. I think at some point that kind of tool is going to be very valuable, but we still have to eat healthy foods. And so, I don't like it when people use technology to remove swaths of food out of their diet or swaths of macros out of their diet because some piece of machinery or some test, which is just a frame. Like, I look at a test as a frame in a movie. Right? It's one frame in a million frames of a movie. It's how you are today.
Right.
It might not be how you are yesterday or tomorrow, and so we can't really just jump in on that. But back to what I was saying, I think people can live very healthy with an 80-20, 80% whole food plant-based, 20% animal protein. And there are some things that come from animal protein that we can't get in fat in plants, right?
Yeah.
B12, vitamin D, and
Carnitine,
I'd rather see carnitine, carnosine, and I'd rather see people eat a whole food like a good piece of meat than to just take supplements all the time.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly on that 100%. I'm going to be doing I'm going to be starting this animal-free challenge next week. I'm going to do another post on it. And when I get out of that, it's probably going to be 7 days, maybe 10. I'll figure it out. When I finish it, I'm going to go and I'm going to flip the switches. I think we talked about this in one of our last Facebook Lives, where currently I do 2 days a week of plant-based / vegan because I do have, there's some things that aren't necessarily plant-based, but they're definitely vegan. And then all the rest of the days I do about a 50%, I call it the flexitarian diet, where it's 50% plant-based vegan, and then I'll have animal protein. So usually I eat 2 meals a day. And on the days I'm not doing strictly animal-free, I'll have 1 serving of food that is completely plant-based or vegan and 1 that is animal protein. And I keep saying I feel I've cracked the code. And I'm going to add to a little bit of what you were saying before on what you have to do to work best for you. And I have found what works best for me, and I know how my body resonates with every single thing that I eat. And it's going to resonate well when I eat steamed Brussels sprouts, way better than if I eat cheese fries. And the list goes on and on. And you people out there have to do the same thing. Even if you have to bring a notebook with you or open up your notes in your phone and take notes on how your body reacts to certain things and how you feel. And if you eat a meal and you feel like super sluggish, like 20 minutes later or 10 minutes later, perhaps there's something there you shouldn't be eating. If you feel stomach pain, stomach convulsions, you're sneezing, you feel like, swelling is going on in your body instantly after eating something, obviously you shouldn't be eating it. You just got to pay attention to what's working and what's not working. So that's been a long journey for me, and I've got it dialed. I know exactly what works. I know what food I can eat, what ethnicity of food I can eat, and what I can have of those ethnicities as well that will resonate and won't resonate with me. And as far as flipping those switches of vegan and the 80-20 rule that Mark was talking about, when I said I feel like I've cracked the code, I think I've cracked the code on building lean muscle mass, maintaining lean muscle mass, and reversing the aging process, all rolled into one. And that's taken years too. But I think I figured it out. And I think that can be transferred across to most other people out there walking this earth. And you have to do the same thing. And I encourage people to try that and just get more experimental with things. And don't be blind and fooled into believing that everything works for everybody, because it's not how it works. What works for me may not work for you, Nancy, watching back in Pennsylvania. What works for Mark may not work for me. I might be able to eat eggs and feel pumped and solid as a rock like Arnold Schwarzenegger the next day, and someone else might eat eggs and have massive stomach pain and headaches instantly afterward. So you got to register what works and doesn't work for you and follow that and follow those guidelines and be creative with your diets, but just don't be a sheep and don't be a fool, because there's no one size fits all really for everybody. There's principles and there's basics that you should follow, but other than that, it's a big free-for-all. It's the wild, wild west, and we live in the wild, wild west, so we know.
You know, Rob Wolf gave a great talk about, I even fell prey to it. Low carb diet will kill you, right? There was a research paper that was published last fall. Low carbs will kill you. Man. And, it's great. Chris Kresser, who does great work, he's an acupuncturist out of California, broke down the study. And they looked at food diaries. Of all things, we already know food diaries are very inaccurate. People lie, they don't remember what they ate, they don't know what a serving is. So one, they're inaccurate. So they looked at, I forget how many people, but over a 25-year period, but only 2 time points. Only 2 time points. And the time points were 12 years apart. So let's say they looked at 1,000 people over 25 years, and the time points were 12 years apart, food diary, and that's what they're coming out with. From those 2 data points, which is just like not very specific in the least, and then the media jumps on this and pumps out a bunch of BS about how all Americans should be eating. Low carb will kill you. And so we have to look at how the news sensationalizes research and not take our nutritional advice from the news, because we don't know how the study was really done, whether it was a good study, whether it was accurately done. And then we have to look at bias of associations putting out information, like the American Diabetic Association. They still promote 6 small meals a day, which I can't believe, considering that we know that keeps insulin levels at a high level. Yeah. And when we look at their sponsorship, it's from big ag, it's from the food industry.
Yep.
Who's going to win from that? The food industry.
Yeah.
And so, again, why I always say you got to be your own doctor. You've got to kind of, and I hope Kevin and I can distill down the right things, the best things, but at the end of the day, as he said earlier, you're your doctor. You're your own petri dish. You are your lab. And you have to pay attention, because medicine is run by pharma. Hospitals are run by sick people. Sick people are put in the hospital to make hospitals money. No one wants to look at the underbelly of healthcare, but healthcare, nobody gives a shit about you being healthy. The healthcare system is about making money for the hospital, making money for the MRI facility, keeping the surgeons busy, keeping the beds filled. They don't do that with healthy people. And so I don't want to say there's a conspiracy, but there is a big business around sick care. And so doctors are on the defensive, because God forbid, and a lot of the doctors that spoke said, this is not how we're taught. This is not standard of care. Low carb is not standard of care. High fat is not standard of care. So if they are recommending non-standards of care, they become a target for malpractice. And yet, the same doctors were no different than me. Fatty liver, and realized this isn't working. This isn't working. I need to try something else. I'm going to go counter to what I was taught and adopt a low carb, high fat diet, maybe more fasting. And, these doctors are on stage going, I lost 50 pounds. I lost 60 pounds.
Right.
And even the NHS doc, National Health System, he was standard of care, shitty care, patients not doing well, lots of drugs. And they showed his stats, because NHS monitors all primary care docs. And then he's like, this doesn't work either, so I'm going to change it, and we're going low carb, high fat. And his improvement in his practice went through the roof.
Wow.
And he became like the #1 NHS doctor in Europe, in England, where they have, in the UK, where they have national health. And it was all around, just going against the paradigm. So the paradigm is not necessarily designed in the right way, and everybody wins. Pharmacy wins, hospitals win, keeps doctors in business. Food, ag wins, and the individual, they lose.
Yeah.
So
I went to I have a couple friends in town here. We're starting to build this little group of. We're trying to build this group of freedom fighters that are against glyphosate and GMOs and all that kind of stuff. And we get a lot of contention from the conventional end of things and people, and they're like, oh, it's a bunch of fluff and baloney, fear mongers, blah, blah, blah. But there's so much research and studies coming out now on glyphosate and GMOs and weed Roundup and how bad it is. I've always thought that. I saw my dad take his last breath. He used to take Roundup and he used to dust it in the gardens in 7-Dust. And he would use Roundup and 7-Dust to kill weeds and stuff in the garden. And I wouldn't touch that stuff at the dinner table, and they would just eat it in copious amounts. And my dad's not here to talk about it right now. Coincidence? I doubt it. And I feel firmly, I won't budge on that. And I feel like what you're saying, you make a lot of valid points. I have a lot of friends and family members, colleagues, and clients that come to me with horror stories of what they went through in the medical system, with doctors, with tests, with x-rays, senseless, useless things they were given, medication after medication they didn't need. And I just got I don't know how that call got through. I got blocked. I got some crazy weird number came up. Anyway, yeah, and I just can't, there's a time and place for everything, and don't get us wrong, we're not sitting here saying all hospitals are bad, all doctors are bad. We both Mark works in the medical industry, for crying out loud. And we have friends. I'd say I have 4 clients who are doctors or in the medical industry and such, and they all vent their frustrations to me about the exact same thing we're talking about, and they're trying to create reform and change. And you can make a stand by not buying into it and always questioning things and going and living yourself, living your life like a petri dish, like Mark was saying, using yourself as an experiment and try to find out what is the truth and what works for you and what works for other people, instead of just being blindly pigeonholed into concepts that are half-baked and half-truths at the most, and being shoveled down drugs that you don't need, or being asked to take tests you don't need, and all this other stuff. There's misdiagnosis left and right. There's all this battery of things, and you just keep getting yourself exposed to more x-rays after x-rays. Half that stuff isn't even needed. We feel you can totally, with the exception of traumatic injuries where you absolutely need medical attention, we like to believe that you can reverse everything through the medium of fasting, proper diet, getting the microbiome hitting on all cylinders, doing the right supplementation, getting enough sleep, connecting with Mother Nature, creating human connection with people, hugging people, loving them, and doing all the positive things in the universe that can pull more positive energy into your body and make you more bulletproof. So what are you waiting for is my question, right? It's like anything you can do all natural, just take it, accept it, and do it. Don't waste time. And
go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
And it doesn't have to be hard. Somebody asked me, what do you eat that's low carb or keto? And, probably like you, I build out a routine. I have 4 or 5 go-to breakfasts. I have 4 or 5 go-to lunches. I have 4 or 5 go-to dinners. Mm-hmm. I don't eat the same meal every day, but I have these go-tos or variations of those go-tos that I can, go after. Or I learn something new, or I'm looking for something new, and I can twist it and tweak it to make it more. So for example, my daughter and wife like hash browns on the weekend with eggs. Mm-hmm. And bacon for breakfast. And so that's usually what we make, and that's my sacrifice of carbs for the day. But I found, and I posted this weekend, a cauliflower rice hash browns.
Yeah,
they were great.
Yeah. I use that stuff all the time.
5 grams of yeah. So, so there are ways, and you just got to go a little bit out of your way to figure it out for your life and come up with these routines. And, discipline actually leads to freedom, right? Mm-hmm. People think because they're disciplined, they can't be willy-nilly. Look, if I don't have to think about what I wear, that's my discipline. I like a uniform. I don't want to stand in the closet and think about what I'm going to wear. Mm-hmm. If I don't have to think about what I'm going to eat, that's ultimate freedom. I don't have to stand in the kitchen and go, what am I going to eat? And fall prey to some refined thing that, we try not to bring that crap into our house, but if it's there and you're hungry, you're going to grab it.
Yeah.
So, being prepared and understanding what 100 grams of carbs look like and what you can replace refined stuff with. Michael Eads, I don't know if you remember 20 years ago, he used to be in Boulder. He wrote Protein Power.
I remember it.
And it's an old book. He's still on the lecture circuit. He spoke, and he really is getting deep into the weeds of things. But what I really liked about some of the takeaways, I'll just give you the takeaways from his really complicated talk that almost lost me. Incretins he talked about. I can't even tell you what those were. But at the end of the day, his research and things were, don't graze.
Right.
Don't graze. 6 small meals a day, I'll kick you in the ass if I see you eating that. Eat unrefined.
Mm-hmm.
He said the more refined things are, the worse it is for our body.
Absolutely.
Insulin and glucose.
Rice cakes, baby, all the way. They build these, man. No, I'm joking. Rice cakes are
and
they're like a big paradox in my opinion, but go ahead, continue.
Yeah. And in your meal, eating carbs last, not first.
You know who's into that? I think I have the book here. Ori Hofmeckler, the Warrior Diet guy.
Uh-huh.
He's into eating food in stages. So he was kind of, I interviewed him on a podcast twice, actually. Once I interviewed him a while back, and he had some very interesting stuff to talk about as far as what his fasting protocol is concerned with. This book was out a while ago, and he claims like he's the founder of like fasting and time restricted feeding and all this stuff. And the guy is a wealth of knowledge, really nice guy. He's very like serious and stuff. But honestly, I think what his thing was more of I would call it more of like a juice fast type angle. And like he was talking about taking certain supplements during the day and different things and eating between certain hours and having like your biggest meal at night, which I've been doing that forever. And I believe that's a key to getting lean muscle mass. But he definitely talks about eating foods in different order, kind of like what you were talking about. And I'm pretty sure he said eat carbs last too. And I never do that. I just mash everything together. It's like I make like casseroles and like stir fries and blends, and I'll have like quinoa and beans and tofu and like, asparagus and like all kinds of things chopped up and put all mashed together. I never do that, but I'm always interested in knowing what people's take is on it. So this guy you're talking about mentioned eating carbs last too.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Very much.
And I got something I want to add really quick before I forget. I came across, if you guys ever want to get some really cool organic stuff, this is a secret of mine. I go to TJ Maxx and Home Goods. They have a couple racks in there filled to the brim with maca powder, cacao nibs, cacao powder, peanut butter powder, all organic, discounted like protein powders, all these different things. And they have these really bizarre things that are organic too. I came across burdock chips the other day. Burdock root chips. Have you ever seen them? Burdock root chips. They were delicious, organic. This company called Stacy and Moms or Stacy's and Mom or something like that. If you happen to see them anywhere, snag yourself some. So the reason I'm bringing this up is because here's something I've been noticing lately that I'm thrilled about. So, let me rephrase that. Ingredient labels and those square graphs on the back of packages that say total fat, total carbs, blah, blah, blah. We should do a talk on that sometime and how to read those, Mark, by the way, because
let's do it.
You have to go by the serving sizes. We'll get into that another time. But anyway, they're starting to put a little tab that says added sugars. Have you noticed it? And I'm thrilled about that. Because when I did this like sugar-free challenge last month for 7 days no sugar, I had to read all the ingredient labels, and the first place I went was the facts panel, then I went to the ingredient label. And if the nutrient facts panel had sugar listed, I would then go to the ingredient label and see if it was coming from a natural source, if it was like beets or carrots or whatever, or if it was some kind of added sugar. But what I've started noticing then is that a lot of companies are putting the word added sugar in there now, and it'll say 7 grams of sugar, then underneath it says added sugar is 2 grams. And then my eyebrow goes up. I'm like, interesting. So they're starting to get a little bit more wise, the food companies, about the way they label things, because it's becoming a more of a synonymous thought for people to look at the amount of sugar that's in the product. So they're actually labeling it now. So that's a step in the right direction, and I'm digging that.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
The more knowledge, the better. To the flip side of that coin, while that's a good direction, who's the gentleman? Rob Wolf talked about how food industry knows better than anybody how to addict us to food.
Oh yeah,
and
they've got it
dialed. So they really said carbs and salt and carbs and sugar.
Yeah.
Right, and then in Doritos, he used the example of Doritos roulette, I think, as an actual bag of Doritos, spicy, super spicy, and extremely spicy. And he's like, that is like the slot machine. You don't know what the next thing is. You're just going to keep eating it because you want to, you don't know when you're pulling that lever if it's going to be 3 cherries or not, but you're going to keep doing it because there's some addictive dopamine hit that we're getting every time. And food industry has done the same thing. By keeping us going after certain things because, we're looking for that thing in it. We haven't found it in that bite. We're going to get it in that bite. Not there yet. Here it is. Oh, yeah, there's my reward. Go to the next bite. Not there. I'm going again. And we keep eating and eating. And that book, Sugar, Fat, and Salt, really lays out how the food industry is just messing with our heads to the nth degree. I mean, it's ridiculous. So, listen, my battery's dying, but I just want to kind of not wrap up just yet, but bring this up. We've talked about this. We shouldn't remove any complete macro. We shouldn't necessarily remove any, restrictive diets don't work because they restrict. So I just want to mention animal protein and mTOR because this came up. While it's easy to say, too much animal protein overstimulates mTOR and causes cancer, and that's likely true. Not stimulating enough mTOR
is a problem too.
Because it won't keep your muscles toned and built. It won't repair like you should repair unless you're just a slug sitting on the chair all day long.
Yeah.
And mTOR turns on T cell production, so our immune system.
Exactly. That's exactly where I was going to go. Boost your immunity.
Yeah, so shutting down things 100% because we think it's bad. Look, if it was in our body and designed and we evolved this way, it's not all bad. What has become bad is the refining and the drug addiction the food industry has created with our food, with the refining of our food, the food on every corner, the eating late, all that stuff is what has become bad. Not necessarily just shutting off or turning on certain things in our body.
Yep, I couldn't agree with you more. So always remember, take your life into your hands and don't, like I said last week when I was talking to Doug, don't let it go to the judges. You be the judge. You be the master. You are the master. You're the judge. Don't let anyone else give you a line of crap and pigeonhole you into thinking things that aren't true or like false. And be very vigilant about who you listen to, who you look at, what you read. Be careful that studies you read aren't commissioned by like Coca-Cola and Pepsi and all these other things. Not that anything's wrong with Coke or Pepsi. I drink it every day, 6-pack. That's how I get my teeth so white. See? No, I'm joking. But anyway, just be realistic out there. That's all we're asking from you. You got anything else?
And
I got to get going because I got a training session. Go ahead.
I know you do. So let me just end with this. Look, if you are overweight, obese, have cardiovascular disease, high triglycerides, high cholesterol, polycystic ovary syndrome, arthritis, big belly, pre-diabetic, diabetic, low carb might be for you.
Yeah.
Start out with 100 grams. Just start by paying attention and start at trying to limit your day to 100 grams. That also includes fruits, right? Fruit is not bad as long as you're keeping it within the range. And, if you have those symptoms, I'll just tell you, I've worked with plenty of people that are trying to lose weight, that got the belly, that I see eating fruit, and I'm like, that's probably not what you should be eating because it's just keeping that insulin level high.
Yeah.
So fruit is not bad unless your phenotype is a high insulin, high glucose person.
That makes all the sense.
And you're trying to reverse that.
Absolutely.
So. All right, man. Thank you for keeping me honest. I don't want to go to a conference and come out a convert.
That's all right, man. I support you. I know you have a good head on your shoulders, and you would never give any falsifying or crappy information to people out there because you're always in it for the people like I am.
That's right. So let's touch base on the side here later today. We need to get back on track with a few things.
Sounds good. In the meantime, everybody out there listening and watching at home, the thousands in attendance and the millions of people watching at home, make sure to go to Pine Pollen Superfoods and check out some stuff that Mark and I are working on. We have this program called Rebuild, which is just getting launched. It's a workout program, a fasting program, and you get Pine Pollen all rolled into one in one easy to find place. You can't find anything better than that. Plus, Mark and I are going to be doing another Reversing Middle Age program coming up in the very near future. If any of you are interested in that, hit either one of us up and we'll give you more details. And my last closing note of the day is remember the rules. Pick up at least one piece of trash a day. Go beyond your comfort zone at least once a day. Live in the present moment. Hug someone at least once a day. Aim for 5 hugs a day, ideally. I read an article on it. 5 is better than 1, trust me. And lastly, just take your life into your hands. That's the underlying message of today. And if you think low carb is your deal and that's going to get you back on track again, go for it. Just make sure you do it responsibly. And don't drink responsibly and drive. That's stupid. Just don't drink at all. If you're going to drive, just don't drink, period. Get someone else to drive you. I did it all weekend. I drove my brother around all weekend long last weekend because he likes to drink and I don't. So I was the chauffeur. It was no problem. And I'm alive. Let's talk about it.
And he's alive.
And he's alive. Everybody's happy. All right.
All right, man. Good seeing you.
Good seeing you, Mark. Take care. See you later, everybody.
Yep. You too. Bye-bye.